All right, welcome back to the Twits by Roald Dahl. And today we are going to start with Mrs. Twit Gets a Stretchin'. Okay, so again, while you're reading along, using your strategies of making connections, making predictions, having I wonders, visualizing what's going on. Okay, so let's get started. So when we stopped yesterday, she had the shrinks, which was a horrible disease, and it wasn't lasting long, and soon she was going to just disappear, kind of like a snowman. I feel like the way that Mr. Twit kind of described it, it reminded me of that. How what would be left of like Frosty the Snowman, right? It would be just shoes and clothing, and if it was Frosty, it'd be just the sticks and the buttons and maybe the carrot if it wasn't eaten. So she's, I'll do whatever you tell me to do, right? Just save me, save me. All right, so now she's going to get stretching. So I can only imagine what this is going to be. He's having fun with this, that's for sure. All right, Mr. Twit led Mrs. Twit outdoors, where he had everything ready to get for great stretching. He had 100 balloons and lots of string. He had a gas cylinder for filling the balloons. He had fixed an iron ring onto the ground. Stand here, he said, pointing to the iron ring. He then tied Mrs. Twit's ankles to the iron ring. When that was done, he began filling the balloons with gas. Each balloon was on a long string, and when it was filled with gas, it pulled on the strings, trying to go up and up. Mr. Twit tied the ends of the strings to the top half of Mrs. Twit's body. Some he tied around her neck, some under her arms, some on her wrists, and some even to her hair. Soon there were 50 colored balloons floating in the air above Mrs. Twit's head. "Can you feel them stretching you?" asked Mr. Twit. I can, cried Mrs. Twit. "They're stretching me like mad." He put on another 10 balloons. Then upward pull came very strong. Mrs. Twit was quite helpless now, her feet tied to the ground and her arms pulled upwards by the balloons. She was unable to move. There's a good visual right there, right? I wonder what that looks like. So her legs are stuck in the ground. She's being pulled up. She was a prisoner, and Mr. Twit had intended to go away and leave her like that for a couple of days and nights to teach her a lesson. In fact, he was just about to leave when Mrs. Twit opened her big mouth and said something silly. "Are you sure my feet are tied properly to the ground?" she gasped. "If those strings around my ankles break me, it'll be goodbye for me." And that's what gave Mr. Twit his second nasty idea. I only wonder what that could be. Make some predictions right now. What could that possibly be? Mrs. Twit goes up ballooning. "There's enough pull here to make me go to the moon," Mrs. Twit cried out. "To take you to the moon," exclaimed Mr. Twit. "What a ghastly thought! We wouldn't want anything like that to happen. Oh, dear me, no!" "We most certainly wouldn't," cried Mrs. Twit. "Put some more string around my ankles quickly. I want to feel absolutely safe." "Very well, my angel," said Mr. Twit, and with a ghoulish grin on his lips, he knelt down at her feet. He took a knife from his pocket, and with one quick slash he cut through the strings holding Mrs. Twit's ankles to the iron ring. She went up like a rocket. "Help!" she screamed. "Save me!" But there's no saving her now. In a few seconds she was high up in the blue sky and climbing fast. Mr. Twit stood below looking up. "What a pretty sight," he said to himself. "How lovely all those balloons look in the sky. And when a marvelous bit of luck for me. At last the old hag is lost and gone forever. I wonder if she really is gone forever. I wonder if he'll be sad. I wonder where she'll go." Let's see. Mrs. Twit comes ballooning down. Uh-oh. Mrs. Twit may have been ugly, and she may have been nasty, but she was not stupid. High up in the sky, she had a bright idea. If I can get rid of some of these balloons, she said to herself, I will stop going up, and I will start coming down. She began biting through the strings that had held the balloons to her wrists and her arms and her neck and her hair. That's another thing, right? When the way he tied it around her neck. Yikes. Each time she bit through a string and let the balloon float away, the upward pull got much less, then her rate to climb slowed down. When she had bitten through 20 strings, she stopped going up altogether. She stayed still in the air. So I'm trying to visualize looking up in the sky and seeing a lady hanging there in balloons. That would be quite a sight, wouldn't it? You know, picture that in your head. So she bit through one more string. Very, very slowly she began to float downwards. It was a calm day. There was no wind at all, and because of this, Mrs. Twit had gone absolutely straight up, and now began to come absolutely straight down. As she floated gently down, Mrs. Twit's petticoat billowed out like a parachute, blowing her long knickers. It was a grand sight on the glorious day, and thousands of birds came flying for miles around to stare at this extraordinary old woman in the sky. Yeah, I'm sure the birds must have thought, what on earth is happening? I wonder how Mr. Twit feels about this, right? He thought she was gone, and there wasn't even a wind to blow her in a weird direction. She's going right back where she came from. Okay. Ooh. Mr. Twit gets a hard shock. Mr. Twit, who had thought he had seen his ugly wife for the last time, was sitting in the garden celebrating with a mug of beer. Silently, Mrs. Twit came floating down. When she was about the height of the house above Mr. Twit, she suddenly called out at the top of her voice, Here I come, you grisly old grunion, you rotten old turnip, you filthy old frumpet. Mr. Twit jumped, though he had been stung by a giant wasp. He dropped his beer, and he looked up. He gasped. He gurgled. A few choking sounds came out of his mouth. He said, ouch! I'll get you for this, shouted Mrs. Twit. She was floating down right on top of him. She was purple with rage and slashing in the air with her long walking stick, which she had somehow managed to hang on to the whole time. I'll swish you to a swazzle, she shouted. I'll swash you to a swizzle. I'll gnash you to a nozzle. I'll nosh you to a gazzle. And before Mr. Twit had time to run away, this bundle of balloons and petticoats in fire fury landed right on top of him, lashing out with the stick and cracking him all over his body. Yikes. Purple with rage. That's a good figurative language right there. I would be purple with rage too, I've got to admit. So, oh boy. Can you imagine? These two, they don't just play little jokes, they play big, nasty jokes on each other. Oh boy, if I was Mr. Twit, I would be scared right now. So anyway, those were our chapters for today. Again, thank you for coming back and listening. Let's make some predictions about what kind of joke she's going to play on him next. If I was him, I might run away. That, might be a good idea, but I doubt that that's what's going to happen. So let's make some predictions for, next time we meet. And until then, keep reading. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon. Okay, thank you.